You are listening now to the Spirituality Now podcast, the show that is solely focused on practical spirituality, leadership, and mindset skills with the aim and purpose of supporting you master your life. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. Welcome to the Spirituality Now podcast. Even my voice cracked of excitement today. I want to tell you, it's incredible to have very well known guests, authors, speakers, teachers. I'm so blessed for the people that we get to interview on the Spirituality Now podcast. There's a saying that I don't know if that is 100% true, but it totally is resonates true with me in my experience that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with more often. And imagine all the people that we hang out around in the Spirituality Now podcast. But today, not only we have an author, a speaker, and when I say author, he's a real author. He's not like okay, let's see what we write based on I ate a vanilla ice cream. Let me write about that. This is years and years and years of training. He's an intuitive coach, author, mentor. He's also a speaker, wonderful speaker, and teacher for nearly 30 years in this lifetime. Specializing in various techniques dedicated to helping individuals like myself achieve goals and unlock our true potential without the usual overwhelm, frustration, doubt, and fear that involves moving forward or getting back on track. Alex Slucki is my guest today, and he's 100% dedicated to providing both personalized guidance and group experiences to support individuals and corporations too, which we'll talk maybe a little bit about that, where they need it the most. Whether we're seeking improvement in areas such as health, relationships, personal mission, or conscious evolution, he is here to empower us in our journey towards well-being, self-discovery, and growth. His coaching style of Alex Slucki, but I haven't said the best part, okay? His coaching style is a holistic in its approach, combining intuition, channeling, deep listening, proven techniques, really, like things that you can apply in this life to guide you towards your desired outcomes. Through his transformative mentoring sessions, he aims to inspire and motivate people to overcome their greatest challenges, to tap into their inner wisdom and create a life filled with purpose and fulfillment, and to help people discover the power of intuition and embark on a transformative journey of the soul. And okay, that's a little bit of his intro. And I think all of my guests are super humble because we get to fetch for bios and we ask them, who are you? And well, that's the Zen question of the millennium, right? But they send us very small bios and we're like, Sophie, who is behind the scenes, who is really like the headmaster of all that it happens in the podcast alongside the team of David and Saul. Shout out to them. We're always fetching for, do we use this bio? What is it? But they are far much more than their bio. But also Alex is our most avid supporter of the podcast. He is, I believe, the only one that has listened to every single episode of our podcast. He gives us feedback. He told us hey, you should put YouTube public so people can watch your YouTube. And I am so grateful whenever you have someone that pays attention and listens and support. I never take it for granted. And so it's incredible to have this incredible teacher, mentor, author, speaker, and singer too in our podcast. Plus, he's our greatest supporter. So, honey, welcome to the podcast. This is your show.
Thank you so much, Iwan. I'm so honored to be here. So happy to be in Spirituality Now. And because I've been doing my own interviews, etc., I think that I'm a little more fluent in English than previous times. So I'm so ready for this conversation, or communication, as I used to say.
The transmutation, and I want to put a warning, a good warning. I don't know if there's another word. There should be an opposite of warning, like an alert of good things. This is going to be fun because Alex and I, go in very deep conversations but also with a lot of laughter and a lot of joy, which I think this is what Alex brings to the table, different than any mentor, any coach that I have heard out there. There's a lot of emphasis in like, oh my gosh, have you heard it? Oh my gosh, something is going to happen. Oh my gosh, Mercury is retrograde. Oh my gosh, the eclipse is coming, which, by the way, when the podcast comes out, the eclipse has already been gone. So we're in the future already. But he brings the component of joy and also a present moment awareness. So, honey, so let's start with a little bit of who is Alex Slucki, so people can learn more about you. Who was Alex growing up? How did Alex got in touch with this deep spirituality that you carry on with so much grace and so much beauty, love?
Wow, that's a handful, but let's begin. So, although one of the things that I try to do is not to identify myself with anything regarding my timeline because there's so many changes going on, but I understand that it can be meaningful for someone to understand how transformation happens, where it begins, and why. So I do believe that I was very intuitive and very sensitive since I was a child. I do remember being very observant of the adults around me and already questioning whether they were being congruent, whether they were being truthful, sensitive towards others. And one of the things that is important to say that I experienced because of the sensitivity and because of me not being ever someone who was like a go-getter or very aggressive in my modality, I always was a little bit of a victim for bullying. It was easy to bully me when I was a child, especially because I was different. I was very different. Like my mother loves to tell the story that once the school director, the school principal, summoned her. She was a lovely lady. And she says, we have a problem with Alex. And my mother, the first things that comes out of her mouth is, with Alex, that cannot be possible. Alex doesn't give any problems. And she's always said that. This is a kid who's not a problem seeker or problem giver. And she said, well, the thing is that he loves to go into the school library and just stay there reading instead of going out to play football or whatever with his classmates or with his peers. And my mother, who was and always has been an incredible loving supporter of my experience, just said, if that's your problem, you're going to still have that problem because we're not going to do anything that Alex doesn't want to do. He's not going to be forced into sports or socializing if he doesn't want to do that. And I so appreciate that, Yvonne, because it gave me the opportunity to fall in love. My first love in this life, I think, has always been literature. I wanted to be a writer ever since I can remember. When I was 3 years old, I remember being in the back of the car, and my father had left one of these pocketbook series books that had like a yellow edge to it. Like the pages were white, but the edge was all yellow, and that called my attention. And I was just inventing the story because I still couldn't read, but I was already wanting to read and invent stories. And I've been a book reader all my life. Fiction, novel, poetry, essay. And I said, I'm going to be a writer. And if I had to define myself in some way, I would say that writing is one of my pursuits and passions and will always be because it's always kind of in the first, in the forefront of my passion, experience, and interest. Along with writing, then came the interest for performing arts. So it was only logical because I wanted to write about fictional characters. I said, if I'm going to write fiction, then I should also be able to understand their psychology. That was a little later, but I entered the career. I combined two majors. One was literature in college, but I also entered a school for acting, which was very good school back then in Mexico City. And I had already been involved in folk dance groups, Jewish folk dance groups in my school. And I was already involved in chorus and singing. I was trained vocally for many, many years by different professors, which I very much loved because they were very spiritual and they focused the voice in a more energetic spiritual level as opposed to just vocal techniques. And so performing arts, surrounded by art because my mother has been an art dealer for the last 53 years. It gave me a very cultural, beautiful background. The only thing about this that was very critical was the bullying when I was a kid, but also the passing of my father, the transition of my father when I was 12 was very traumatic. The family suddenly entered kind of a completely different period in life. Everything that I knew back then ended, overnight, almost overnight. Like in the course of 1 year, my father dies. He was like my best friend, not only my dad. Uh, there were some issues going on with my brother, so he entered depression and he was not very socializing and he was a very angry adolescent. So that was very hard to deal with. And then my mom, she didn't want to hold on to the memories of my dad in the house they built together. So she decides to sell the house, and she thought it was going to sell over 1 year. No, no, no. 3 months later, the house was sold. So we had to get out of the house. I had two colleagues, and because she bought an apartment and started getting rid of all the art we had in the walls, because there was a lot of debt that my father had, left us with because of his investments that he couldn't complete because of a heart attack and his passing. It was a lot of pressure for my mom and for ourselves, and we left the house, buy the dogs. Gone is the brother, gone is the life that we knew. Gone is the life that we knew, and that was what I can deem now as the dark night of the soul. So,
Wow. So, honey, wait. Let me, because that's wow. It's and that's a little bit of the beginnings, the foundational pieces of Alex
mhm,
and Dark Nights and everything. But that's interesting because all the challenges and things that you face have brought you to this moment. To help so many people in such beautiful ways. And I know you have. How many books have you written, Angel?
I think it's about between the small ones and big ones. I think it's about 15 at this point.
15 books, and I
15
hope
or
we have
16, yeah.
15 books that we have the link. You have a few of them in English and a lot of them in Spanish. So we'll make sure to put the link for people to know, because you have very transformative journeys in your books that help people with all of the things that you've gone through and they go through, but in a very joyful way. And so currently, you are living in San Miguel Allende, correct?
Yeah, yeah, I am.
Okay, good. And so I have a couple of questions based on this. So after that experience, the death of a father, which is very huge, and the adaptation process to adapt. Where was the moment? Uh, what what motivated you of all of the things that, because it seems to me that everything happened. Well, not at the same time, but it seems like it was a period that it was very fast, right? And so, what was your pointer? What began to pull you into the spiritual arts?
Well, what's interesting is what drew me into spiritual arts was desperation, loneliness, anxiety, not being able to focus my mind in the here and now. And I was getting pretty tired of that because it's not like I was melancholic all the time. I was very artistic, and that was my healing experience. I healed myself by expressing myself. I started writing poetry like crazy and stories, and I started publishing, getting involved, very much involved with my community back then. So I danced and I acted and I entered all these workshops that had to do with arts, not the healing arts, but art as a healing mode. And at the same time, Yvonne, I was very angry with that source that we call God. So I couldn't say the word God between my 13 years and 24 years old. And I was very reactive even to friends who were a little more traditional and followed, for example, the Jewish traditions, etc. I just laughed at everything, and I was just very skeptical about everything. I couldn't say the word God for 9 years. And then when I was 24, a friend of mine I was invited to this business, and he invites me to know TM. Oh, before that, yeah. First, I was invited to a retreat by Carlos de Leon, who had invited, there were these friends from my dancing group who said, oh, there's going to be this Tibetan meditation. And I was curious about it. I said, yeah, why not? And there was the green Tara, and there was this activation of energy that was absolutely spectacular. And it was a beautiful initiation in the Tibetan philosophy and practice. But I said, it's beautiful, but it's not me. I immediately knew that I was not going to stay there. And then another friend, almost immediately later, invited me to know TM. And I loved it because it was scientifically based with all these studies from different universities. And I said, you know what? If it has a background that can be proven, then I want to remember that I was not very connected yet to the more esoteric or mystical side of things. So I said, I need something that will guarantee that I enter my space of silence and that I can feel more peaceful. And right with them, along came my dear friend Armando Pascasio, who is very much invested in Ayurveda since forever, and he's also a TM professor. So he did my diagnose, and by giving me the Ayurvedic principles for well-being that involved, Maharishi, the yoga preparation for the meditation, and the sesame oil for, to do Abhyanga massage on the body. And then I changed my diet, and I was feeling so much better. 1 week later, I started experiencing bliss. And I said, I'm going to delve into this. So I did the more advanced program that is called Siddhis, which involves the Yoga Sutras and the Siddhi yogic flying technique. So I said, if my body can actually leave the ground without me efforting it, start, like hopping on a mattress without you efforting it, it's like the energy is so powerful. I said, then anything can happen. And 1 year later came these light beings that started contacting me because I opened up again to what I could perceive when I was a child.
Okay, hold on. I think we have to. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions there before we go to the light beings. Before we go to the quadrants, and before we go to anything. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think this is very important. Transcendental meditation, that was the beginning of your experiencing of bliss. Not only that, the Ayurvedic approach. And I love that you said something about your introduction to the Green Tara, the Tibetan tradition. I love that you said that was beautiful, but that was not for me. I have encountered that for me and many of my guests that, that they have encountered all of these different teachers and they say it's wonderful, right? But this is not for me. And I think that's important for people to understand that you have to feel what resonates with you. For example, for me, the Buddhist practice, they just feel right in my body. Right? I love Jesus, I love his leadership, but I love the Buddhist tradition in the Shaolin arts. It feels right to my body. But the Tibetan, it doesn't. It's not because it's not powerful or beautiful, but it is because you have to find what resonates for you. And transcendental meditation, I had a similar experience to you that when I did transcendental meditation, what impressed me the most was, and that's for TM, for people that listen to Alex saying TM, that stands for transcendental meditation. As I know, not many people know what TM means. But the speed of healing. For me, I was doing my first marathon and my last one, Alex, the Rock and Roll Vegas Marathon, and the recovery that I had based on that. I was recently initiated in transcendental meditation and I was practicing every day, twice a day, the 20 minutes, the mantra repetition, all of that. my recovery was at least half or less time than many people that ran the marathon. I was so impressed with that, so incredibly impressed with the science of that, and I love that through that that was beginning to the encounter of bliss coming from years of which I thought it was very truthful what you said, that your introduction to the healing arts, to the spiritual arts, so to speak, were actually desperation, anxiety, and loneliness. And we just recently interviewed someone that was talking about existential angst. And one of the Zen teachers, which I believe he's one of the most clear people that we interview, Mado Moore, in many of his interviews, they asked him, where does this all started? He said, existential angst. And everybody tells me, I wish I could tell you it was like, wow, there was a strike of light. There was a blissful moment. Most of the most transcendental experiences that we have interviewed have been through this. So thank you for that. So you encounter bliss. You are practicing transcendental meditation, which kudos for doing these programs because it's a training. I mean, transcendental meditation is just not sitting down, it's training, it's consistent practice and discipline, and you're so disciplined for that. But so then you encounter these light beings. What are these light beings? How did they show up for you? How was it? And I know, just for framework for people, that you don't identify with this, but you are coming from, you said it, from a Jewish tradition, right? And you are encountering now transcendental meditation, and you're about to encounter luminous beings. I just want to put it out there as it gives a framework and an understanding to people and permission for them to experience a little bit more. So tell us about these luminous beings. What happened?
Well, it all started when one of my Transcendental Meditation Advanced City Yogi Program friends invited me to an archangelic meditation. He said, we're going to meditate with Archangel Raphael because it's the ray of this color of light. I almost said, yeah, whatever. Okay, let's do it. Interesting. I was pretty open by then. But after that meditation, I started to experience something that could be similar to kinesiology, but in my body. I noticed that my hand some weeks later started kind of moving on its own, like doing things that were very beautiful, like mudras, these movements of the hand that are very symbolic, or like symbols with the hand. And then I was, it's going to sound funny, but I remember talking to my hand and my hand kind of responding. I said, I'm talking to somebody through my hand, but I don't know exactly if it's me, if it's spirit, what's going on. And one fine 3:00 in the morning, I was woken by my own hands doing this choreography that was almost like a mudra that all the time ended like this, like my hands, coming together in namaste.
Like this, like just
like
for
this.
those of you, yeah, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see the mudra that Alex is doing.
Yeah. And then it kind of serpented its way from my chest upwards above my head. And then it started evolving into me feeling a lot of energy in my body and my body wanting to get up. And I was going like, no, I want to sleep. And the body wanted to get up. And suddenly I find myself, Yvonne, literally dancing almost like what I remember was a Hindu warrior dance or something like that in my room. That was the strangest thing. I was not afraid. I was not shocked. I think I was too tired to be shocked by the experience. But my body starts dancing, doing mudras and everything. And I had my eyes closed. I couldn't even open my eyes, but I never crashed against anything. And then the energy started to fade. And finally, I could go back to sleep. So the next morning, I said to my friend Armando, the Ayurvedic and TM professor, I need to talk to you. So we went to get coffee in one of these nice little coffee shops at La Roma in Mexico City, which is a very, artsy place. And I said, this is what happened to me. And he said, oh, how fun. Maybe you're being contacted by someone who wants to give you a message. Why don't you try automatic writing? And I said, what is that? I had no idea. I had no idea what was going on. He said, well, grab a pen, grab a napkin, and maybe you'll get a message. So immediately after grabbing the napkin and the pen, I start feeling my hand trembling, and it started, in a sort of calligraphy. It started writing on its own. And the first message I get is from my brother's angel, as he presented himself. My name is such. I am your brother's angel, and I'm here to tell you this message. And literally, the first message I got was a prediction. And he said, if this continues to happen in your brother's house, this is what's going to happen later. And I said, oh, okay, I have no idea what's going on. I didn't have the greatest communication with my brother back then. And then I started to experience a download of information now regarding my friend who was in front of me. It was like it opened up very radically. So there was energy, and there was writing, and there was envisioning, and then they just started saying, breathe, breathe, breathe. That's all I was getting in the end in the napkin. Start breathing, breathing. And I started feeling very cold in my body. I don't think I've ever told you this whole story. So I started feeling cold in my body. I said, okay, I started breathing, and then the heat came back. And he goes like, let's go to my office and continue this. So I go to his office in another neighborhood. I started giving him information, and then suddenly I get information regarding his mother. He starts crying and says that it's true. You're receiving information. I'm starting to feel chills right now. Like here, in the here and now, I'm starting to feel the angels come in. So they presented themselves as angels. And Armando, my friend, because he was the first witness, and it was close to my birthday, he gave me a journal to write on. And he said, may you continue your explorations and, try automatic writing. And he kind of stimulated that I continue with this. And I did. So I started connecting these guides, and they said, we are your angelic team. You're going to be talking quite a bit about angels in the future. I said, no, I'm not. I don't even know if I believe in you or not. I've always been kind of a rebel, so I don't just go like, yes, sir.
And I want to tell you, I love that you did. So that's how the channeling with angels. I don't even know if we should call it channeling because he's so misused that word. But that's how I met you. I remember I was living in Tepoztlan, and my homeopathy teacher, which I was studying homeopathy with plus doctor, she said you should have an experience of there is this guy that channels angels. Doesn't like to call it channeling, but really the angels talk to you. And I remember meeting you. I remember what an impactful feeling that of all honestly the presence of these luminous beings through you. Anyways, we could talk about these hours and hours and hours, but so that's your experience, and you begin to channel and you begin to continue your work, right? um, and you write all these books, and because I want to talk about the your current work that has brought you all of this just as a background so people know of all the things that you've gone through, because you can tap into the wisdom of astrology, of the Mayan astrology. I mean, you are very knowledgeable of that, the tarot, but not as the way of divination that people use it, but as a map, right, for people. And you also have created all these systems that this is what I want to talk, especially the current system that you've created, that is called the four quadrants, right? Tell us a little bit about it. How did that came through? You told me that it was again desperation, but it's an incredible system that you are about to publish for people to be able to guide themselves into life. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Okay, so the system is now called the Four Quadrants of Evolution, and it's a life map that I downloaded in a time when I was coaching or mentoring a client, and she was not advancing in her health issues. Like there seemed to be like this chameleonic force inside her, like When we resolved this problem, then it moved to something else. Immediately later, there was this new symptom that lasted for weeks or months. And then there's, okay, we solved this, and immediately another infection. I said, what's going on with this lady? Why can't I, help her move forward when I'm very used that my mentoring experiences, coaching programs, they move quickly, Yvonne. I'm very used to saying, 2, 3 months and you're done. Literally, you're done. But here was weeks on end, and I just was not advancing. I was about to quit with her and say, I'm not the right person. I'm not the right match. I don't feel I'm helping you. And I'm starting to feel like an imposter or a failure. But then I asked, I asked on the vertical level, what do we need to do to help this woman really move forward? And it's a little bit like the Matrix. The experience is a download that comes from source, spirit, you name it. I won't give it a name, but it's very immediate, and it feels like something. It's almost like, like this tissue here. It starts to unfold or unwrap like this, or unpack, and suddenly you get this entire system of information coming in that through the words starts unfolding on the go. And suddenly I have the 4 quadrants completely structured in a matter of minutes. I have no way to explain it. Then I go deeper and I start investigating and I make it bigger and longer and understand better over time. But at that moment, it was just enough to tell, you know what? You're in this quadrant. This is what's happening. This is what's blocking you. And this is your way forward. And I said, in that particular time, this is quadrant 3, to give you an example. I said, you're an empath, and empathic people usually take very seriously sacrifice as a form to help others thrive. I said, but it doesn't have to be that way. And boom, this particular message is you don't have to damage yourself or hurt yourself in order to achieve communication, or you don't have to be lesser to yourself so others can thrive, was what she needed to hear at that moment so she could start moving forward. So the quadrants are 4 ways to experience evolution. What we seek in the quadrants is that we don't judge any of them, because if you're in quadrant 3, you might judge those who are in quadrant 1, but it would be like someone in high school saying that someone in kindergarten is wrong and what they're learning is unimportant, or it's they're being selfish. Like,
Okay, what you are saying is the quadrants of evolution, there's many quadrants, right? Because
there's
for
4
people,
quadrants. Yes.
there are 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
Okay. And no matter what quadrant we are in, right? Whether quadrant 1, 2, or 3, 4, we shall not judge the experience. We can use them, my experience of the quadrants, for bettering for our lives and the people around us, correct?
Yeah, it's actually gentleness based, it's compassion based, it's consciousness based. So you're not supposed to judge any of the quadrants, because we've all been or will be at least once in each of the quadrants, at least once in our lifetime. Quadrant 1 is the densest, is very challenging, because there's a primal motivation and a primal experience, or a driving force in each of the quadrants, and the primal experience. So, for example, quadrant 1 is very dense because this is where you experience radical changes, things you didn't expect in your life. There may be a catastrophe or a loss, or you might have been experiencing violence in some way. Like, let's say, for example, with what's happening in Israel, Palestine, or Israel, the Gaza conflict is very violent, and there's been a lot of loss, a lot of tragedy, so much sadness, so much griefs. But this can awaken a lot of anger, desire for vengeance. Somebody has to pay, polarization, and we can very easily, seeing it from outside, start judging how wrong that is. Well, we're not supposed to be in the judgmental place of saying this is right, this is wrong, and playing the holier than thou card, and I know more than you card. It's more like trying to understand what is the light behind that darkness, and what will people learn within the confines of that quadrant. So in quadrant one, you learn resilience, you learn how powerful you can be as a human being. You learn to survive. This is like someone who's dropped in the desert and they have to learn to survive, or somebody who's on a vision quest. They go to nature and they're not supposed to communicate with anyone and just try to find their inner strength and their inner light. And it can be very, very scary. When I think of a vision quest, I go like, oh no, that's really scary for me. Like, I'm not attracted to that at all. And then I know people who will go to fast one week in nature or 2 weeks in nature, and they're just surrounded, like they don't even have a roof over their heads, but they're learning about their inner strength and power. That's the more enlightening side of quadrant one, survival. Survival to know your strengths, your talents, your being creative with what you have to deal with, and your power. The lesser side of what quadrant one has to do with vengeance, destruction. Nobody wins. This is like the Nordic version of the gods fighting each other, the Ragnarok, where everybody will die. This is something the quadrant one people might believe. There is no exit to this. So if I die, you die. If you hurt me, I'll hurt you, or I'll hurt you before you hurt me. But they need to move forward and learn to evolve to the next quadrant or the next quadrants, you know. It's not exactly a linear movement. We can move forwards, backwards. I see myself, Yvonne, for example, moving on the threshold between quadrant 3 and 4. So the second quadrant, for example, you want to hear about the second quadrant?
Yes, give us briefly. Yeah, I have so I'm taking notes.
Okay.
So, but yes, so this is quadrant number one, where he's going to give us briefly quadrant two, three, and four, and then we'll move to soul whispering before we close the podcast.
Of course. So, for example, quadrant one is the survival, learning your strength, knowing your power, moving forward in a more creative manner, and learning to take care of yourself without being aggressive to the environment, without hurting or destroying the environment just because somebody hurt you. Okay? This is where you get the villain in the movie that goes like, now the whole world has to pay for my misery. And they want to destroy the world. That's the worst of quadrant one. The best of quadrant one is I learn to empower myself. No matter if nobody's standing beside me, I'm going to stand beside me, or I'm going to stand for me. In the second quadrant, we've learned to depend on ourselves, but now we become the egotists. But the egotist is a very creative individual. I call him the creative egotist because the egotist is still not interesting in benefiting other people, but he or she is not interested either in destroying or taking vengeance on the world. The egotist is interesting in making it in life. But the problem with the egotist is that there's a lot of drawing resources from others and sometimes cheating. The darker side of the egotist is I'm going to cheat, I'm going to elbow my way to the top. Nobody else can be up there with me. I'm the best. And their drive is validation, recognition, is look at me. I'm the best. Either I'm the most beautiful or the most wealthy or the most famous or the most intelligent or the most prepared. It's very, very, very competitive. Here we start seeing other people, but as competition. And we want to be, at the forefront of everything, no matter what. So what the egotist needs to learn is that they won't feel completely satisfied just because they're at the top at the end. Sometimes they might make it, and then it feels lonely at the top. Like, where's everybody? Or why am I still feeling a void inside? Because they were trying to fill it with outer validation. So the school for the egotist is I validate myself. I recognize myself. I don't need anybody else's validation. I've learned to be resilient and powerful and strong. I've learned to be creative. I've learned to do my work. But I don't need to cheat my way to the top. And I certainly don't need others to validate me. But what I can consider is what if, at the end of quadrant 2, what if communing with other people, connecting to other people, understanding them, learning from them, and teaming up with them can be even more fruitful and more creative than doing it alone. So there's the crossing the threshold to the third quadrant, which is beautiful. It's the empath. So the empath is all about being in the emotion of others, with others, like I feel you, you feel me. We enter the world of gentleness, sweetness, sometimes sacrifice, and what the empath wants is to be the opposite of the egotist. I want to look like a really, really, really nice, good, compliant, gentle, life-giving, supporting, fighting for causes person. So uh, it's what I call negative positive, and there's a reason to that. Now the empath feels so much pain at the idea of being an egotist or cheating others or taking away from their energy, that they go to the opposite side and they start giving more than is their due. So I've seen programs where people will actually sacrifice their own bed to help another person. They don't take care of themselves. There's no self-care. So they can, protect dogs in their house, 20 dogs in the home, or, working with the elderly or fighting for a cause involving nature.
That quadrant three, it's a lot in the mothering thing. It's such a when you become a mother, it's so important to remember to take care of yourself, but it's challenging. Like this morning before the podcast, the preparation and everything, I made sure everybody had breakfast. Ian went to the school, the dog, I cooked the dog because I didn't want him to get bored and asked me, did I have breakfast? No. I did not. So, hello,
Yeah.
quadrant three.
Welcome to quadrant three, the sacrificers. It's very,
Welcome, people.
honey, it's very much the Christ era. I'm going to say some radicalities here, but it's the Christ era. Is like, I sacrifice for you. Now, there is a dark side to every single quadrant. There's a dark side, and we must understand this. There's a polarity within the quadrants, not just between each quadrant, but within the quadrant. What is the dark side of the empath? Guilt, shame, no ability to set healthy boundaries, breaking agreements because you go like to the child, if you don't finish that meat, you don't get dessert. This child starts crying, you go like, okay, you get the ice cream. I feel so bad and so guilty. I feel guilty about saying that you hurt me, so I don't say you hurt me, so I don't make you feel guilty. Now I feel bad that I made you feel bad, but you should feel bad because of all the hurt you brought to my life. It's very entangled sometimes, and there's sometimes unnecessary sacrifice. Like, you don't have to do away with everything that interests you just to look like a really, really, really good, nice person. You won't go to heaven faster just because you suffered more. And this was a download. And this is really important because a lot of people are using sacrifice as a means or as an idea that they'll get to heaven first. So they play the holier than thou card. Because I'm so nice and you're not, you're going to hell. I love you, but you're going to hell. I'm going to heaven because I'm so good. I give so much charity. I sacrifice.
I have to. I have to. I'm going to choose talking like Chick Mormon here. I'm going to choose to jump into that force because I do have. I always have to watch myself onto that sacrificial thing. But I also have a pet peeve regarding, for example, and this is what I'm going to say. I love Jesus, but I don't love Christianity. I don't love the fact to sacrifice oneself and to look holier. That has been a challenge, and I was telling you that I have incredible friends from the Christian tradition that come to me saying, I'm so worried about you. I'm like, why are you worried about me? I'm praying for you. Why? Because you went to a Buddhist monastery this weekend. I'm like, okay, let me tell you something. My Buddhist friends don't tell me I'm going to pray for you because you are hanging out with Christians. So I love that you're in this. I'm more a little bit more paradoxical in the way here, but thank you for bringing this topic. So that's quadrant three. Obviously, I'm identified with
Yeah.
it.
Right. And to move forward and cross the threshold to quadrant four, what we need to understand is you don't need to suffer, you don't need to sacrifice, you don't need to make others guilty or see. You don't have to feel guilty about others, ashamed. You don't have to just accept everything and be good, good, good. You can also set healthy limits, which is very, very healthy to move forward towards quadrant four. Now, quadrant four is about exploring your creativity in a way that brings joy. The driving force in quadrant four is joy, and it's a win win formula. It's not like I lose so you can win, or I sacrifice so you can thrive. Sometimes it's necessary, Yvonne. What I'm saying is like, and I insist we shouldn't judge any of the quadrants. There's a lot of mothers. I think of the women in Africa, for example, who've sacrificed everything so one of the members of the tribe or the village can travel elsewhere and make it in life. And then that person has kind of the commitment to bring something good back to the village. And it must happen in many places in the world. And that's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful when you think about it. But there's the dark side, like not to overdo it or not to play the, oh, I'm so nice and I'm so good and I'm so generous. So, quadrant four is creating your own little heaven or haven. And what this means is you find people who resonate with this curiosity, this ability to explore what else is there that we can create in life that brings joy, health, wealth, beauty, happiness. It's very, very enticing. Whether it be like a luxurious home or a luxurious project, a beautiful project, but without the idea that you need to suffer or to engage in the suffering of others to make it happen. These people don't get angry because something else is happening on the other side of the world, and then they come out, with their pancartas. How do you say that? With their signs. They will not march in the street, defending a point of view, whether it's feminism or whether it's, they don't march anymore. They actually build a wall and they go like, no, I'm not interested in engaging at that level. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm humiliated, no. They concentrate all their energy in creating something that will benefit the world. I think, for example, honestly, of Richard Branson, I think of Elon Musk. The dark side to this is that there's a lot of judgment regarding quadrant four people. Most people don't get the quadrant four people. Like they're such egotists because they're not involved in the world in that way. And no, it's not the truth. There's this beautiful story that I included in the book of a horse that is confessing to a mole, to a child, and a fox that in actuality he's a Pegasus, but the other horses were envious. So he hid his wings. And the great risk in quadrant four is that we minimize our potential because we're afraid of somebody else judging us or misinterpreting us or envying us or even cursing us for the many potentialities that we're creating with joy in life and that we're not suffering, even if the entire world is suffering. We're like, well, why are they not involved society wise? Why are they not suffering along with us? Why are they not angry or ill dignified? Feel undignified about what's going on the other side of the world. And go, no, I'm very busy creating. I'm busy
I,
creating.
I love that. And Alex, one of the things that I'm always wary and attentive, just wary, not worried, but attentive is that all the systems, that help us, navigate our lives. And we're going to go into soul whispering because I know we have just a couple of minutes left. But that what you just said, like I don't want, like if I'm in quadrant three or quadrant four, to have to bring people into my quadrant. Like I have seen the need of people to say, I'm in quadrant three just like you, right? Well, not that, but like, or I'm doing this just like you, or I have the same experience like you, because people want companionship, right? People want not to feel alone, and sometimes we want to bring people into wherever we're in, just not to feel lonely. And we say just to, it's not only to say like, oh, I understand you. There's a need for people that we need to be very attentive with any system, with any things. We teach something called futuring, to not say, I'm in a dark future just like you. No, you know, you have your own experience. You may be in this quadrant, and I not. So I want to invite people to, as you know, that's why it's going to be incredible when Alex gets his book out and he's already doing sessions and all of that. I really recommend for you to navigate it with him, because it will help you, and also be able to clear yourself from the need to bring people into like, I'm in quadrant 3 or quadrant 2 or quadrant 4, or I'm an empath just like you. So that's something I bring awareness to. But I don't want you to spill all the beans about this. I want people to read the book, right? So, honey, all of this is an incredible system, and I know you and I are bringing this alongside futuring to corporations and stuff, which I'm excited. Maybe one time we'll bring you back to the podcast just for this, the corporate setting of this. But talk to us. We have a few minutes left, and this is the main core of this, about soul whispering. What is it? Because what you're saying, how you've been helping your clients, how you are remarkable at that, to be able to find what one needs. And it only can come from the soul, and that's truly what helps us navigate as a soul, the map of life. So tell us a little bit about it, love.
So, in very simple terms, soul whispering is I listen to the whispers of your soul and I convey that message back to you, because your soul is always connected to source. As opposed to the programming we receive as the vessel that we are. Imagine your body and your personality being like the spaceship, but your soul is the astronaut or the Voyager inside. And that Voyager is connected to kind of a mothership that is called the higher self, that where all the information is still available regarding who you are in essence, what your mission is supposed to be, and where is the best, what is the best routes to reach your destination in ways that is more gentle, more joyful, and more coherent. So this is a substitute for what I used to do channeling angels. It's the same objective, but the angels themselves said, and they said it back in 2020, right before everything that happened as of February, March 2020 that we know. They said, and now is going to be the time where people need to listen to their souls. So I listen to their souls and I share that message over the course of one session, many sessions, depends on what we need. But I'm always listening to your soul. Tell me what you need to know about your journey and where you're clashing personality and body wise. Maybe your personality thinks that you should go left and your soul goes, well, the right path is easier or is gentler and you're not going to suffer so much. And
Honey,
you need to listen to that.
how do you know when the soul is speaking?
There is a very particular way that soul speaks, because as humans, we speak very rationally. We try to make sense of things. It's very constructed. Whereas soul likes to speak in emotions, sensations, symbols, metaphors, the language of dreams. So I get visions that I then get to interpret and convey in words that will make sense to you, but they always make sense. So I may see, let's say, some sessions ago, I was seeing rabbits, on a prairie. And what does this have to do with this person? Well, the socializing and the pointed ears had to do with her sense of hearing, which was very strong, and her sense of touch and the textures like the bunny. And I kind of unpacked it for her. And it made a lot of sense. If I'm in the human side, I would have said, well, you have a lot of societal ability, like socializing abilities and this and that. But the soul also conveys a feeling, a vibration, which is very uplifting. I feel very blissful. And I don't always feel very blissful when I'm just talking to people. one-on-one if the soul is not participating. So there's a vibration going on that is very uplifting and it's always very wise. And I also hear words and I will say things that I normally would not and that the person would normally would not say but recognizes as truth inside. So this is how I know. And
Okay,
practice, practice, practice.
I love this. And I have heard you, like you're saying, like, you have to resolve situations and challenges. And you tell me, I'm just going to ask my soul. I mean, I remember when you told me that, I was like, can I do that? It's like, yes. And there's a feeling, there's something. And you have resolved a lot of circumstances and things just by that. Can you just walk us through a tiny little experience of that? Like just the feeling of how tapping with your soul and how tapping to other soul can help you out of all these conundrums that is called the human experience.
The first thing we need to recognize is that we are never negated or we are never denied the contact with our soul because our soul is us. There's no polarization. If it sounds polar, it's because we have the human language, but there's no separation. So the moment you go like, soul, I want to talk to myself as you, soul makes itself present. That's number one. Number two, the vibration will feel different, probably more coherent, happier, either more open or more interested in life just as is. I actually, for my courses, I have what I call a soul whisperer's decalogue, 12 points. So, for example, your soul knows more than you, literally. To recognize that, your soul is your inner GPS, always choosing the best path for you, and you can feel it, you can hear it. In my case, it's very, very theatrical. Sometimes Alex's personality will be crying, and then I stop crying, and suddenly in comes the voice of the soul. It almost looks like a psychotic person or a schizophrenia, but it's not, because the soul says things that make a lot of sense and bring a lot of peace inside. Can you still hear me? Are you still there? Okay. So when I start seeing these images and I start feeling in this uplifted and more expansive way, and there's light coming into my mind, this is how I can describe it. Like, it feels like there's an opening in my brain where I feel with more criteria as opposed to my personality that might be kind of controlling things or unhappy about something. This is where you start seeing and experimenting the difference. And sometimes all you have to do is start saying that you want connection to that.
Mm.
And
I,
stay
I
open.
Yeah, stay up. And then you have these like 12 kind of step to guide people with. And so just to end, Alex, because I love that. And, there was a different vibration when you were sharing about the soul. It was like I was making my notes and everything, but it got very quiet. There's no more, there's no, I love that you said, how do you know when you're in contact with the soul? There's no more polarization. There's no more duality. That's the non-dual experience, right? Who you truly are. So, Alex, how can people work with you? How can people find you? And we are going to make sure to put your website, your social media links. But what are the modalities that they can work with you? They can work one on one. Are they trainings? What is it?
I'm working on some trainings and I promise to make them in English as well. Right now, I have my Instagram account, which is just at Alex Slucki, Slucki. Just remember my last name is Slucki.
Yeah, we'll put
Same.
it here. We'll put it in the copy.
Okay. Same for the website is, the www.alexslucki.com. I'd like to make it simple. And in my Instagram, you'll find my contact. So this is where you can find the opportunity to make one-on-ones. In my website, I explain my modalities, what I'm doing, either the group channelings or the one-on-ones. Yeah.
And
alexslucki.com.
you're available for speaking engagements and all of that. I am so honored to have you. I think we need so many episodes just to talk about each area of your life and the different tools that you use. But I do want to tell people that Alex is an extraordinary writer. And I think his path as a writer is unbelievable. He really writes in a very, I think I remember Seneca and Tolstoy and Shakespeare. Like when I say I'm a writer and then I compare myself, obviously, and look at me, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, in action. But I'm like, no, I have to honor that you are a really incredible author, and I can't wait to read your new book. And I hope you publish it in English too, English and Spanish, because it is going to be phenomenal. And hope to have you back here. And I want people to get to know you. And thank you from all of our team for listening to all of the episodes, for sending us feedback of everyone. I truly believe that you know the speakers and the teachers that I have interviewed more sometimes than I know. I'm like, who's that? And so thank you, Alex. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for bringing us a little touch base with our soul, for creating the quadrants. And we look forward for what you're going to create more. Thank you, love.
Thank you so much, darling. And for those who want to find out what I'm writing, and thank you for mentioning those books, some are in Spanish, some in English. You can find them in Amazon. There are 6 of them in Amazon.
Yeah, if you can send us the link, we're going to make sure to put the link for everything. Send us the link of here, the books of Alex, read the books of Alex, his website, his social media. And also you can follow him on Instagram, because he has, very quick shout out, he has a show. He has English and Spanish, and that's where you can meet him more. Please tell us a little bit about the show, of the interviews that you do, and your weekly or bi-week or every 15 days that you do a reading in English and Spanish. Please tell us.
Thank you. Thanks. So I alternate between English and Spanish, and also I alternate between Terra for the Soul. I do one reading per every 15 days or every 2 weeks. I do a reading for what's going on energetic-wise and how we can navigate those energies over the next 15 days. That's in Spanish in the morning, and in English, it's in the afternoon, like around 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And then the next week, I'm going to interview, and it's called Ascension for the Soul, where I ask my interviewees, my guests, to share their tools, very much like you do it, Yvonne. And it's beautiful. It's just sharing information of very valuable people. It's worth getting to know these beautiful people who do amazing work. So it's also in Spanish and then in English. I'm considering a change in the English modality, but it's there right now in my Instagram.
And I just want to tell people that I love that you were very, very focused on that, the interviews that you're doing, because you're inviting people that have either podcasts or programs.
Yes. And the one who interviews, I ask the soul to be the one to interview as opposed to my human self. I go like, okay, soul, you interview, and the result is spectacular. The soul always asks things that I would never come up with. So that's very surprising, amazing. You have to come back to the program now, because that happened after I interviewed you, my dear.
Wonderful. So thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone, so much. And we will see you next week. Les mandamos un beso. Adiós.
Un beso. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere where you prefer to listen to your podcast. Make sure to check the links to everything we mentioned in this episode. For more news, future or past episodes, or for any other inquiry, please visit our website at delaflorteachings.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Spirituality Now podcast.